Hello class, I am continuing on chapter 1. Right now this little lecture is going to be about audience awareness and listening versus hearing. So let's first start with audience awareness, which you can find in our 2013 I Speak textbook on pages 13 to 14. First of all, our audience is really the people that we always constantly need to be aware of because they're the ones that we are giving our speech to. They're the reason why we're standing in front of the classroom, maybe at the lectern, whatever, talking, giving some sort of speech, right? So we need to think, what do they want? What do they want to hear? How can we give it to them most effectively and efficiently? So let's keep all that in the back of our heads. What I really want to focus on is don't offend your audience, and to keep in mind what is classroom and internet appropriate. I've kind of mentioned last week, always keeping in mind classroom and internet appropriate, topics and things when you're part of this online public speaking course. As you get older, you're going to leave a bigger and bigger internet footprint, right? And that's something that our parents didn't have to worry about. Let's say one of you wants to become senator one day, and it's going to be really easy to dig up some dirt on you if you've been all over the internet, typing things, saying things, whatever. Keep in mind that when you do participate in these, like in the internet, just leaving your footprint, lots of people can find it. So let's just try and stay internet appropriate, but also classroom appropriate. I've had some students give me some strange ideas over the years as to what they think classroom appropriate is, but let me just clarify. Not appropriate to ask the teacher out on a date. Not going to happen, I'm already married. Not appropriate to talk about drugs, alcohol, guns. Nothing like that. I always want to approve your speeches just so that we can have these types of conversations, mainly because I want to talk to you about how you're going to present something. So let's say that you really do want to talk maybe about this beautiful handgun that's from the Civil War that's been passed down generations. That's great, and you can really give a really good speech on that, but we need to keep in mind what's classroom appropriate in the fact of where are you going to be presenting this speech. If you plan on using a campus classroom to give your speech, you can't bring a gun in. So even though there's some topics that you can treat really appropriately, let's just try and steer away from those just because this is a classroom discussion. Another big hot topic, of course, is along the lines of abortion, religion, those types of things. In general, I'm okay if you mention them as long as you don't get too pushy. We're going to really focus on this when we come to the persuasive speaking side of our semester, but you can really offend your audience on some of these topics. So let's talk about not offending our audience. Well, first of all, why don't we want to offend our audience? Well, if your point is to make some enemies, offending your audience is a good way to go about it, but not the best idea if you're trying to consistently find audience members. Because remember, you have to find 10 audience members per speech. They're not going to want to come back if you offend them. But also, let's see here. I just got a mind blank. But we don't want to insult them because we want to be careful what we say about others. We don't want them to stand up in the middle of your speech and yell at you. Not a good way to deal with it. So, yeah, be careful what you say about others. And this is on page 13 of our textbook. It says, and I quote, "You can avoid insulting your audience by always approaching them with an attitude of respect." Now, let's say that you do end up talking about a touchy subject, or at least somebody interprets it as touchy. As long as you approach them appropriately and with respect and acknowledge, like, maybe this won't be the best topic for everybody, but please listen to what I have to say. That would be better than just saying, hey, this is what I think, and it's the right way to think. No. Alright, so we talked about audience awareness. There's going to be a whole chapter later on in the book about that. Right now, let's move on to listening versus hearing. Let's see what you are currently doing. Are you listening to me, or are you just hearing me? Alright, this is on page 17 and 18 of our textbook. And it, really goes into listening quite well. And this is a boring topic, so we'll just run through it real quick. But listening is an active thing. That means we're purposefully doing it. We're putting effort into it. We receive information thoughtfully, and like I said, we're putting in effort into that receiving of it and soaking it in. Hearing is passive. It just happens to you. You're just simply picking up on sound waves because you have ears. Do you have ears? Okay, maybe you don't have ears. Is this closed caption somehow I don't know about? Can you read it? Maybe it's just like, whew. It's like, when you have NPR on, or your dad has NPR on at 4 o'clock in the morning. Okay, so let me tell you, my dad comes to visit every now and then, and he wakes up at 4 o'clock in the morning because he's an old man. And what does he do? He turns on NPR, right? Great. As long as the volume's not too high, I can just hear it and just zone it out. Now, if an interesting thing comes on at the top of the hour when they're talking about the news, then I might perk up and listen and be up for the rest of the day. So that's really hearing versus listening. So how do we actively listen? Oh, hey, you know what? I just gave the lecture, and I still have it, on our communication model. So and if you haven't looked, you'll understand this in a minute, but when we have all this going on, this noise that I halfway erased over here, all these squiggly lines, the dog barking, the phone ringing, the doorbell going off, the TV's on, while Sarah's yelling at Ryan to pick up his toys, we can hear a lot of that. We have ears, we're soaking in that stuff, but we're able to not pay attention to it. That's hearing. Listening is hopefully what Ryan is doing to Sarah when she says, pick up your toys, I want to watch Scooby-Doo, right? Yeah. Alright, so how do we actively listen? The textbook makes a couple good points on page 17. So we avoid distractions. There's a guy yelling in my alley right now. I'm just going to avoid that. I'm going to focus on this awesome YouTube video my teacher has made for me, right? Avoid that. Maybe I'll shut the window so I can't hear it, but I'm also focusing. Taking notes. Active, right? Making that decision to take the notes and use our hands. Which goes in notes. Taking goes into actively engaging. Take those notes. Ask questions. Maybe you're watching this and at the end of it you're like, I don't understand communication. You send your teacher an email and say, Miss Ryan, freaking out. And I'll say, don't worry, let's have a Skype date. Work on eye contact. Obviously, eye contact during active listening is going to be important during speeches and that sort of thing. Not so important for you to stare in my eyeballs right now, because I can't see you anyway, right? So it's important for me to give you eye contact as the speaker. You as the listener don't need to give me eye contact right now. You should be taking notes, though. Finally, be thoughtful. Follow the flow of the speech. Figure out where it's going next. Remember how at the beginning of this video I said that there's two main things that we're talking about: audience awareness, listening versus hearing, right? And then I defined listening versus hearing, and now I'm talking about how to actively listen. So just follow the flow of it, kind of go along with it, understand. All right. Like I said, I just talked about audience awareness and listening versus hearing. So if you have some good listening versus hearing tips or examples, feel free to let me know on a forum, especially if they're funny. All right, good way to win the teacher over is by being funny. Have a good night.